Hi everybody. Today we're going to be talking about The Power of Habit, Chapter 3, The Golden Rule of Habit Change, which is about how to change your habit. And we've already talked about the habit loop, the cue, routine, and reward, and the craving. So today we're talking about how to change that. So if you have your books with you, I'd like you to look at page 62. And here, one of the important ideas in this chapter is that you can never truly extinguish bad habits. And the argument is you can't get rid of a bad habit. You can't. Now, I don't say that you have to 100% agree with that. Feel free to argue with the book. You never have to accept every single word from a book. But what we have to do is accept the premise that this is his argument. Whether or not we agree with it, this is his argument. And in his argument, he says you can't extinguish, you can't completely delete a bad habit. All you can do is change it or modify that. So based on that, look at the rule in the very next paragraph right here in the middle of the page. If you use the same cue and provide the same reward, you can shift the routine and change the habit. And this is, in fact, the golden rule of habit change. His argument is you can't delete a habit. Once you have a habit, you have it forever. But what you can do is you can change it. So, what do you have to do? You have to keep the cue. You have to keep the reward. And what you change is you change the routine. Now, going back to chapter 1, way back in chapter 1, we had the quote that said on page 27, if you remember back on page 27, there was a quote that said, even small shifts can end the pattern. And that's why I said that quote was so very important, because that quote then goes to the golden rule of habit change. So he's saying that changing the pattern. Now, sometimes you need small shifts and sometimes you need big shifts. If we stay here on page 62, the very next line is really important. He says, Duhigg says, almost any behavior, almost any, which is very important mitigation. He's not saying any behavior. He's saying almost any behavior can be transformed if the cue and the reward stay the same. So if we have a trigger in life, take smoking for example. A lot of students say they want to stop smoking. Why do they smoke? Maybe because they're stressed. So the stress is not going away. The cue of the stress is not going away. And then what is the reward? Less stress. Those two things, it's not going away. So what then possibly could you change? Maybe you could change how you deal with the stress, but you're not going to get rid of the stress. And you want the reward. So see how that works? That's the golden rule of habit change. Let's see, what else? Then the next part of the chapter, and this is the part that honestly students have the most difficulty with, because it's a lot of examples and a lot of stories, and it talks about alcoholism and it talks about football, and it's a little confusing. So let me sum it up for you. The whole rest of the chapter, the whole part of the chapter is about belief. You can't do it if you don't believe you can do it. You have to believe you can do it. And that's what I wrote here on the board. You believe you can do it to succeed. You have to believe. If you don't believe you can do it, you're never going to do it. And this isn't just for habit change. This is for everything. Mary Kay Ash said, if you think you can, you're right. And if you think you can't, you're right. We do what we think we're gonna do. This is what we do. So that's his whole point. You have to change your routine, but you have to believe that you can change your routine. And And how big of a change do you have to have? Well, honestly, I think it depends on how bad the habit is and how big the routine is. But if you go back to what he said before, even small shifts might make a difference. So the golden rule of habit change is actually very, very simple. You change the routine, small changes in the routine. So here we have our habit loop. We have our cue, we have our routine, we have our reward. Our reward, our entire routine, our entire loop is driven by the craving. We want the craving. So how do we change a bad habit? We keep our cue. We can't get rid of our cue. If we live in life, we're gonna have stress. If stress is a cue, we're gonna have stress. If we're in college, we're gonna have assignments. If we have a job, we're gonna have whatever our cue is. Whatever your cue is for your habit. If we have rewards, we've gotten rewards, our brain likes rewards, we want those rewards, we crave those rewards, we're not giving those rewards up. We want them. The only thing that we can control in our lives is the routine. So we have our cue, we recognize our routine, and we get the reward. So this, the routine, this is what we change. So when we look at the golden rule of habit change, and we look at changing something, this is what we change. This is what we have to figure out. We have to figure out our routine. What is our routine? When I have this cue, what do? I have to be able to break down my steps into specific actions so that I can change those actions. If I don't know what my actions are, then I can't change my actions because this is what I have to change. Therefore, I have to know what they are, and I have to have very specific things because I have to believe I can do it. And if I don't know what I'm trying to do, I can't possibly believe I can do it. And so that's chapter 3. That's the golden rule of habit change, and that's belief. And that is, in fact, chapters 1 through 3 of Duhigg. So I hope that makes sense. I hope that helps you, and I hope everybody has a great day. I encourage you to change your bad habits.